I used to be a normal guy. Just a regular dude trying to get through life, juggling work, friendships, and my dream of sleeping in on weekends. That was before she showed up. It started on a completely ordinary morning. My alarm went off at 7 a.m., and I groggily smacked it into silence. But then, another sound. A tiny, high-pitched voice right next to my ear. Wake you. Wake you. I jolted upright, heart hammering. Hovering inches from my face was the tiniest creature I had ever seen, a fairy, about 6 inches tall, dressed in shimmering pink and gold robes, with wings that buzzed like an over-caffeinated hummingbird. Ah, finally, you wake so slowly. Not ideal, she sighed dramatically, flipping her blonde curls. All right, listen up, human. You're now my official alarm clock. I blinked. I'm your what? She crossed her arms. You have one job. Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., you must wake me up. No excuses, no failures. Yeah, no, I scoffed. I don't take orders from a talking firefly. That's when she smirked and pulled out a tiny hourglass, glowing with a soft blue light. She snapped her fingers, and suddenly I felt a strange pull, like my body was being drained. Congratulations, she said cheerfully. For every day you fail to wake me up, you lose a day of your own life. I froze. You're joking. She wasn't. The first morning was already a disaster. I had stayed up late the night before, hoping this whole fairy business was just a weird dream. But nope. At exactly 7 a.m., I jolted awake to her tiny but infuriatingly loud voice screaming, "Wake up, human." Bleary-eyed, I barely managed to shake her awake before collapsing back onto my pillow. You have to mean it, she snapped. I need a proper wake-up. None of this lazy nonsense. So that's how my mornings turned into a nightmare. I had to come up with new ways to wake her up, clapping, playing music, shaking her tiny bed, even yelling. If I didn't put in enough effort, she'd declare it a failure, and I'd lose another day of my life. At first, I tried reasoning with her. Why do you even need me to wake you up? Can't you just set an alarm like a normal person? She wrinkled her nose in disgust. Alarms are crude. A proper fairy needs an alarm clock with soul, a human one. You should be honored. Yeah, I'm thrilled, I grumbled. It wasn't just the waking up. She started making demands. Since you're awake anyway, you might as well make me breakfast. I glared. Do I look like a tiny fairy butler? She just fluttered onto my shoulder. You do now. At first, I thought I could outsmart her. Maybe I could sleep through it. Ignore her. Set up a fake wake-up system. Nope. One morning, I tried ignoring her, stuffing my ears with earplugs. Big mistake. The second I failed to wake her, I felt an invisible pull on my very existence. My body felt weaker. My head spun. And worst of all, I knew I had lost a day of my life. After that, panic set in. I couldn't afford to mess up. I started setting alarms for myself before her wake-up time, so I could prepare. I even rehearsed different wake-up methods. But it wasn't just the mornings that were ruining me. Because I was constantly exhausted, my work suffered. I started showing up late, forgetting assignments, and zoning out in meetings. Hey man, are you okay? My coworker Jason asked one day. You look like you've been hit by a truck. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, I muttered. Social life, gone. My friends stopped inviting me out because I was always tired. Dating, forget about it. One time, I tried explaining it to a date. So, there's a fairy. And she steals my lifespan if I don't wake her up properly. The girl just slowly nodded and excused herself to the bathroom. She never came back. Then came the worst day of all. I had overslept, not by much, just a minute. But that was enough. I felt it instantly. The pull on my soul. The dizziness. The loss. No. I gasped. Come on. I was barely late. The fairy just sipped tea, completely unbothered. Rules are rules. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed her tiny golden alarm clock and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. I quit, I yelled. She just yawned. You can't quit. You're under contract. What contract? She pulled out a tiny scroll. The moment I chose you, you agreed to this. Magically binding, no take-backs. I felt like I was going insane. Why me? She just shrugged. Because you looked like you needed some responsibility. I stared at her, utterly speechless. I had two choices. Keep being her slave until I aged into dust, or find a way to break the contract. So I started digging. I scoured libraries, searched old fairy tales, even consulted a psychic. No one knew how to break a fairy contract. Until I met an old man at a bookstore. "You wanna get rid of a fairy?" He chuckled. "Tricky business. But every contract has a loophole." He leaned in. "Tell me, does she ever oversleep?" A light bulb went off in my head. That night, I mixed a sleeping potion. Okay, it was just a very strong herbal tea, but whatever. I convinced her to drink it as a celebration for our partnership. The next morning, I woke up alone. She was still snoring. My heart pounded. If she didn't wake on time, would the contract break? Seconds turned into minutes. Then, something snapped. A rush of air, a crackling sound, and then, silence. She was gone. For the first time in months, I felt free. I slept for 3 days straight. Epilogue. The aftermath. People asked where I'd been. I just said, long story. Life returned to normal. No screaming fairy, no lost days. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the morning, I swear I hear a tiny, angry voice whisper, "I'll be back."